If you'd stand and say the pledge with me. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Eva Henry. Steve Odoricio. Jeff Baker.
Here.
Elise Jones. Here. David Beacom. Greg Stokes. Randy Wheelock. Sean Wood. Chrissy Fanganello. Robin Knech. Anthony Graves. Roger Partridge. Here. Gail Watson. Libby Zabo. Bob Pfeiffer. John Marriott. Bob Roth.
Here.
Larry Vidham.
Here.
David Spellman. Aaron Brockett. Ann Justin. Here. Lynn Baca. Here. Tara Radloff. Here. George Teal. Doris Trular. Here. Laura Chrisman. Here. Richard Champion. Gail Christie. Rick Teeter.
Here.
Debbie Nasta. Catherine Whitman. Steve Conklin. Kara Swanson. Joe Jefferson.
Here.
Jeff Deacon. Mark Gruber. Daniel Dick.
Present.
Lisa Jones. Laura Brown. Lynette Kelsey. Here. Scott Norquist. Storm Glore. Saoirse Karis-Graves. Here. Ron Rakowski. TJ Gordon. Mike Hillman. Brad Weasley. Stephanie Walton. Hello. Shakti. Dana Gutwein. Jerry Bean. Isaac Levy. Phil Sunanek. Bruce Beckman. Jacob Lofgren. Here. Wynn Shaw. Here. Joan Peck. Here. Ashley Stolzman. Here. Connie Sullivan. Here. Colleen Whitlow. Joyce Pelazewski. Deborah Jerome. Sean Foray. Chris Larson. Kyle Mullica. Jordan Sowers. John Dyack. Here. Sally Daigle. Here. Rita Dozal. Here. Heidi Williams. Eric Montoya.
Here.
Herb Atchison. Emma Pinter. Joyce J. Adam Zarin.
Here.
Deborah Perkins Smith. Bill Van Meter.
Here.
And we do have a
quorum. So before we have a motion to approve the agenda, there are a couple of things that we're moving around. First of all, on the strategic informational briefing, the governor's task force, the people that are doing that presentation are stuck at RTD right now. CDOT right now. So it would be interesting if they're stuck at RTD, I guess. But I'm sorry, Bill. I'm sorry. They're stuck at CDOT.
No, that's because they reduced the trains to
So that particular item will be moved as to be our first informational briefing. We were going to have a presentation, but kind of decided that there's people that are going to be joining us, and we didn't want to have them joining us halfway through the presentation. So rather than that, we're going to move into the report of the executive director.
And I better speak slowly. I got a feeling. Well, good evening, everyone. Good seeing everybody. I do have a number of items for you today. First, I wanted to just first mention the 2017 board workshop that was held down in Colorado Springs on August 25th and 26th. I think by all accounts, it was a successful event. We've seen some head nods. Thank you. And I think, quite frankly, I think the last two events were fantastic that we've had, the last two board workshops, and I think we've gotten some very good information out of those and some action items. And specifically, this last one, the TIP focus area action item we have on the agenda tonight was born out of that board workshop. So, congratulations on that. I should also mention that the post-event survey is still out there, and it will be open for another week. So if you have not participated in that survey, we would encourage you to do so, particularly in the area of ways you think, ways or any ideas you might have to improve the workshop. We're always looking for ways to improve, of course. Speaking of the workshop, I'm sure you noticed as you came in, we had all the posters that were that were created for the workshop, and I'm telling you, it was great to see all the innovative projects that are going on in the region. We were very pleased. We had set the over and under at probably 12 for the number of posters we would get, and we came closer to what, Brad? 28. So that was fantastic. We were delighted by that, and this is something we may even make it a permanent fixture as part of our workshop. I think it was great. Upcoming events, I would like to draw your attention to one of the handouts that we have on your desk this evening. Is a save the date for statewide Internet Portal Authority mini course on Thursday, October 19th from 1:30 to 4 p.m. in this room. For those that are not familiar with SIPA, it's a new partner for us. We've been meeting with them probably over the last 6 months or so. Thank you, Bob. And you know, we felt it was a tremendous opportunity to get this in front of you all for those that might have some interest in doing some innovative stuff in regards to your websites and the like. So we would encourage you to participate in that event. Way to Go Tober. Way to Go Tober is kicking off in just a couple weeks at the beginning of October. And those who are not familiar, this is a DRCOG program, and it's an annual challenge amongst employers throughout the region to see whose employees can have the biggest mode shift away from driving alone. We have 50 companies and organizations representing more than 35,000 employees participating in this year's event. It's a growing campaign. In 2015, we had 25 organizations. 2016, we had 37, and 50 this year. So it's so we're really encouraged by that. Signature organizations participating include Google, City County of Denver, Lakewood, Aurora, and the town of Superior are participating from our crew. CBS Ford, Denver Zoo, Anschutz Campus, and of course your very own DRCOG staff are also participating in that event. So if you have any questions or interested in who's involved within your communities, what businesses, please contact Steve Erickson of our staff at Communications and Marketing Director. He'll be sure to pass along that list to you. Railvolution Regional Day. I see a few that were at that event today. On the back end of a successful Railvolution conference, DRCOG helped organize a regional day, and it's pretty typical as part of these Railvolution events. The local are responsible for this, but they've always called it Local Day. But this time around, we refer to it as Regional Day. And in the opening session, which was entitled "A Connected Multimodal Transportation System That Provides Everyone Travel Choices," the name is long, but our very own Director Jones served on the panel. She did an outstanding job. I was even telling her I should have been taking notes. She did a fantastic job. And also on that panel was Kathleen Osher from the Transit Alliance, Kelly Bruff from Metro Denver Chamber, and Dave Genova of RTD, and they did a fantastic job. And there were two other sessions as well that were equally as in the last event was about mobility choice, which we are participating in, and Jim Gunning, who's the managing director of the Mobility Choice Initiative, was on a panel. DRCOGs. Because Railvolution's in town, there's a lot of councils of governments that were in town too. I was telling someone earlier, I think it was Director Shaw earlier, that I've had countless phone calls and emails asking to sit down just to talk, about what we're doing here at DRCOG and just peer exchange type of stuff. And fortunately, I didn't have the time to meet with all of them, but I did meet Monday with the Minneapolis St. Paul Council of Government called Met Council, or Metropolitan Council. To talk about governance. They are looking for a new governance model for their organization. So that was very interesting to me, just to talk about the different things that we do versus what they do and the like. Then yesterday afternoon, I sat on a panel with Mayor Jackie Millay of Lone Tree and former CDOT Director Don Hunt to talk about mobility choice to the Sacramento Council of Governments, or SACOG. They brought a delegation in. They're doing a 2.5-day tour of the region, and there are about 18 folk, elected and staff, that were part of that. So that was quite interesting as well. I would like to close with a couple personnel recognitions. We celebrated a milestone here at DRCOG yesterday. We had a gentleman, Richard Schweider. I can't pronounce his name. Richard Schweider. And that's not even really how you pronounce it. There's It's Polish, and he described to us how you pronounce it yesterday. And listen, I was as close as what Connie just was to it. But anyway, he's been here at DRCOG for 45 years. He started on September 20 of 1972, when gas was 55 cents a gallon. The median income was $11,000. And it's fantastic. And I wish Richard were here tonight so I could introduce him. He is unbelievable. He works in our IT section, and he's so unbelievably energetic. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be here another 40. But I think it's important that we highlight those milestones for you all because because you guys don't get a chance to meet everybody who's behind the scenes that's doing this work. And he's just a tremendous gentleman, and we're very proud to have him at on our staff. Last but not least, our very own Jayla Sanchez Warren received the Diversity and Inclusion Award from Denver Commission on Aging. She received that award last night. Well, and as you know, we're all very proud of Jayla and what she does and the work she puts in for our seniors. And it's awfully nice to see that there are others that are recognizing the good work she does as well. So thank you, Jayla, very much. Cheers. And with that, Mr. Chairman, golly, I'm done.
That's okay.
Okay.
I did miss one item. We have Director Lofgren from Lochbuie has been here before, but his alternate is here as well tonight. So I'd like to introduce the Lochbuie alternate, Larry Strock, right in the back here, if you'd raise your hand. Thank you very much. And with that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to move into public comment. So at this time, we have 45 minutes allotted for public comment. We do ask that you do not provide comment for anything that the board has already had a previous public hearing for, and we'll allot 3 minutes per person. And if there's more time needed than the 45 minutes, we'll have more time at the end. So at this point, is there anybody that would like to address the board? Seeing nobody, we will close the public comment. And we'll move on to the report of the chair. This will be relatively short because P&E, we're going to have to wait till Director Pfeiffer is in here. The RTC did not have a meeting yesterday, so I have no report. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Dyack for the finance and budget.
Great. Thank you, Chair. We met before this meeting. We had a couple of consent agenda items. We approved authorization for the Executive Director to accept grant funds from the Colorado Refugee Services Program for the next upcoming year. I think we've been doing that since 2012, if I'm not mistaken. We approve authorization for Executive Director to accept annual bonus incentive payments from the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing regarding Colorado Choice Transitions Program. This program assists seniors with a transition from nursing homes to long-term care community living arrangements of their choice. We also talked at length and a very spirited discussion, I believe, about the budget. It was just more of a discussion, but we're hoping to it's slated for board approval on November 15th. The purpose, let's see here, and then Sam DePiesel, our real estate person, updated us on the progress of new space for DRCOG. It's progressing. We still have three options, but it's moving along quite fast. The intention is to put a letter of intent or LOI on one. The committee felt comfortable giving the executive director the ability to do that. The LOI is non-binding. When we get a contract, it will be presented to the committee for consideration and approval. But the LOI again is non-binding. So that I believe is it. Director Rex, anything else?
No, sir. I think you did a great job.
All right.
Sorry, there was a lot of laughing at that meeting.
Is that yours? Yeah, it was. That's great. You need to.
So for those who are just joining us, I want to bring you up to date as to where we are. So we have gone through agenda items 1 through 4. We have completed agenda item 7, the report of the executive director, and 8, public comment. And on agenda item 6, report of the chair, there was no RTC meeting, so I had no report, and Director Dyack just did the Finance and Budget Committee report, so I'll turn to Director Pfeiffer to do the P&E.
So the P&E committee had a blast down the hall.
You're right.
And in fact, it was filled with laughter, fun, and jokes, just like the finance and budget. Actually, thank you for allowing us to be a little bit late getting in here. We are moving forward on the executive director hunt, and my sub-co-chair, Herb Atchison, has been leading that effort. They concluded the 2 days of interviews last week? Gosh, time goes by. And now we will be working on those names and the next phase. So I'm going to turn over some details for her, but I want to kind of prepare the board of what's going to happen next on October 4th, which is our normal workshop. It will be really a big P&E meeting, and the board is welcome to be here to watch all of it. Yeah, well, they can. I mean, it's a workshop, but you all come. You'll watch the candidates give their presentation on a topic that they're not fully aware of. They will have some time, so it gives a fair level playing field for them. But what I want to stress is that we get as much people here to observe those presentations and kind of see how those play out. And then the P&E committee, after those presentations, will go into executive session and then try to narrow it down to the one executive after that. So. Herb, did you want to give some more color to that?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Nope.
Kind of walk you through the process.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, it was. I'll give you the number. We're down to 4. I'm not going to tell you who they are yet because it's not public. The October 4th meeting of the group, all board members, P&E, finance, everybody. This will be an executive session. Each candidate will be given 20 minutes to make a presentation here to the full group. There will be question and answer period afterwards. We will go through the 4 presentations. We'll excuse the candidates. Then this body, exclusive of any visitors, except for the 4 I'm going to identify in a minute. We'll have a discussion. The P&E group will take in all questions and answers, all feedback from the board members. We will then move into a separate room. You will still be in executive session in this room. You'll be on recess. We will go back and weigh the information and feedback, and we will come back to you the same evening with a recommendation of the first place candidate. And we'll ask for concurrence of the board to start negotiation with that individual. At that time, we will make it public knowledge on the website of who that candidate is. We cannot offer them the actual contract except through a resolution by the board on October 18th. That will wrap up the search. Everybody will have voice, everybody will have input, and everybody's got to vote. We have 4 very diverse candidates. I think we have some strong ones, we have some strong ones, and we have some strong ones. And we have been discussing this at length tonight, making sure that what we are recommending going forward are all real viable candidates. Every person being interviewed is viable. So it will be up to the board on the night of the 4th to get your feedback. And on the 18th, it will be your decision as a voting board of who we select, who the proposal is, but we will have already negotiated as of your decision on the night of the 4th. We'll go into negotiations, but by law, we have to make that 14-day notice. So the notice of the 4th goes out immediately after the board. IT is set up to publish that on our website. It'll all be set up and ready for us to go. So we have had a very good process. We have been able to maintain a schedule on track to try to get this settled for us at the earliest possible time. And I appreciate, first and foremost, the P&E committee, but also the selection committee that's spending all the time in the interviews and the pre-interviews of trying to get down to the list. EFL has brought us a fine list of potential candidates from across the country. So we've had a very good process, and I'm very proud of the work that the group did. And that's it, Mr. Chairman, for me.
Questions or comments? Director Jones.
I was just curious, you winnowed it down to 4 from a list of how many?
If you count everybody who applied, about 50. Now, some who applied were not qualified, so they did not get past the EFL review. When we finally got down to getting down to what we interviewed on the 13th and 14th, we interviewed 9. We're down to 4. But we kept cutting it. What we started with was about, I think, around 30 to get down to the groups that we talked to last week. But excellent qualifications from around the country. I think you'll be very happy with what you see on the 4th.
Thank you very much. Oh, Director Graves, sorry I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually just wanted to take a moment to thank the committee chairman, Director Atchison, who I think did a remarkable job in herding cats and getting to a fair and objective assessment, I think, of all of the candidates in the pool. So, Herb, thank you so much for that. And then I just wanted to clarify, I assume Roxy for the board for that evening of the 4th is going to give a concise summary of next steps so that everybody is crystal clear, because it's still a bit cumbersome, the process, and I just want to make sure that all the board members are clear on what the process is and have a chance to come and participate. Thank you.
And to follow up with Anthony, from a staff position, Roxy Ronson has been a rock star in getting us through all this, coordinating with EFL, with all the phone calls, the meetings, the correspondence, keeping everything tight. If I had the authority, she'd be getting a bonus tomorrow.
I think she's still in talking to
Yeah, I think she was smart. She wouldn't hit, so she didn't have to hear about it.
So those of you who have been in more than one meeting with me know my sense of humor occasionally. So when the previous meeting was run a little bit over, there was debate on why it was running over, and somebody suggested it might have been Herb, and then the comment was made something about Peaches and Herb, and then we were trying to decide who Peaches was, but anyway.
Peaches would have been Roxy.
All right, so I neglected to do one thing here, so we need to kind of circle back real quick. So just as an update, we've got what I neglected to do is entertain a motion to approve the agenda. But before we do that, I just want to make sure everybody's clear that the Governor's Task Force is still going to be the first informational briefing, and other than that, we've gotten through agenda items 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. So next is the consent agenda, which are basically attachment B. It's just the minutes of the August 16th meeting. Are there any changes, additions, corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, one. Okay. So Director Lofgren is the director, not the alternate. Thank you. Any other corrections or additions? Have a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we are on to our first action item, or our only action item actually, discussion of the 2020-2023 TIP focus areas. Mr. Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is agenda item number 10 in your packet. Well, I mentioned this earlier in part of my executive director's report that, you know, the impetus for for this action item tonight was an action that was taken by at the board workshop in late August, 25th and 26th, where we talked about this item, and the real impetus got back to we had a tip review work group we were directed to form a tip review work group to look at other models throughout the country and how they allocate their transportation funding. And part of a white paper that was presented to you all, there was a request of that group that the board actually provide focus areas to how they would like that investment to be made over the 4 years of the TIP, or at least to have a conscious discussion about how that money should be allocated over the 4 years. So that was really where we started with this, and then at the board workshop, staff provided the participants at that workshop an attachment of 9 potential focus areas for your consideration, and that is in your packet as attachment number 1. There was a 10th potential focus area for consideration that was requested at the workshop itself, and that is footnoted at the bottom of your first page, and and I will read it for you. The 10th one was enhance long-term mobility while reducing vehicle miles traveled was the 10th. So what we did at the board workshop, we went through this exercise called paired comparison, and basically what that is, and all it is, it's a matrices where you compare each individual potential focus area with the other, with each of the others. So 1 versus the other 9. And you do that for each pair, and you decide which one you favor over the other. And then at the end of it, you have a ranked, theoretically they come out in rank order from 1 to 10. And we did that, and then ultimately the board decided, or sorry, excuse me, the participants of the board workshop, the exercise resulted in the 3 focus areas that are included in your packet, and I will read those. Improve mobility infrastructure and services for vulnerable populations, increase reliability of existing multimodal transportation network, and improve transportation safety and security. Those were the 3 that were chosen by the participants of the workshop. These were presented to the board at our September work session, where we had some discussion about that. There were a couple requests for some additional information, a description of those, and I hope we provided that for you, as well as some example projects of what they may look like. And again, they're not, they're not limited to these projects that we have in here. They're just simply examples of what that might look like. So basically, all we're asking for you today is approval of those 3 focus areas, so that the TIP policy work group can use those in our evaluation and establishing criteria or recommendation of criteria for your consideration at some future date. I will say that at the work session, we did ask you some questions, and we provided some detail for those that weren't present at that work session. On the last page of your agenda item, we asked if the focus area should be used as a litmus test for project applications, or should it be used primarily as a guide for investment decisions, which I think there was consensus amongst the group at the work session that it should indeed be used as a guide and not a litmus test. We asked if consideration of the focus areas involve quantitative and qualitative evidence, and the consensus of the group was that it should be both. And last but not least, we asked if the consideration of focus areas should be different at the regional share level versus the sub-regional share level, and it was the consensus of the group that they should be considered at both the regional and sub-regional level, with some flexibility, of course. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you for with the proposed action.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much.
Governor's Task, they're not here yet.
Yeah, that's fine. So I said that the Governor's Task Force would be the first informational briefing. They unfortunately are not here yet, so we'll just move into the informational briefings, and we'll slip them into a slot when they show up. So agenda item 11 is our first informational briefing. presentation on the RTD strategic budget plan, and it's Ms. Heather McKillop.
Just up and down there. Thank you. It's great to be here this evening. I'm Heather McKillop, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for RTD. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes going through where we're at with our strategic budget plan, our annual program evaluation, and our long-range financial plan for you. And I was pleased to hear that there's some spirited conversations here around budget too, not just at RTD. So it's good to know everybody's having those conversations. So with that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, we call it an SBP update. That's our strategic budget plan. The strategic budget plan is our 6-year plan for what we call our base system. And our base system is funded with the 0.6 sales tax that we had for quite a while. And then you'll hear me talk about the annual program evaluation, which is, we call it the APE. Some might say appropriately, is our fast tracks portion of the 6-year plan. And that is has the 0.4% sales tax attributed to that. One of the things to keep in mind as we'll go through this presentation is that under our legislation that was voted upon, we can move money from our base system to fast tracks, but we cannot move money from fast tracks to the base system. So as I point out some things, that becomes important as I walk through the presentation. And I know you have a full agenda, so I'll try to be as quickly as possible. So regarding our base system, our SBP update, we, like everyone, had to look at reductions to capital and O&M projects. We started out with a very large list. Some might say it's a wish list. Of course, all of our people think it's their must-have list. As we work through the process of looking at different funding alternatives that we have available to us, we have to continue to reduce those and try to capture just the basic things that we need to get done with the funding we have available. One of the things we did this year with our strategic budget plan is we really concentrated on what we call our state of good repair. So those things that fix or repair, replace existing infrastructure rather than expansion of infrastructure. So in this 6-year plan, you're going to see that on the base system, that we're really looking at maintaining what we have. Luckily, we were able to lower our debt service. We had about 6 bond refundings this year, both from bond debt and also certificates of participation. That freed up close to about $150 million over the period between 2018 and 2040. So we were pretty thrilled with those refundings. And one of them, of course, large one, was the DUS refunding. We had revised income from higher interest rates, so we were able to add a little more money there. We relooked at our fair revenue calibration and looked at it against the DRCOG model to make sure we were using that appropriately. One of the things we had to do, because we do not have sufficient funds right now projected in the fast tracks portion of the budget, or the APE, we had to move money from our base system in 2023 to be able to fund our fast tracks O&M as well as debt service and capital program. Then we had to use reserves and then replenish those reserves in 2022 and 2023. I don't expect you to memorize this, but it's in your packet, I hope. So if you are really interested in the numbers, this is how we lay out our 6-year plan for both our base system and our fast tracks system, as well as we try to use something similar for our long-range plan. It basically identifies sources and uses, and this is how we keep a rolling tab of where we are. What I need you to know in this one is in 2023, currently, we transferred $32.7 million from our base system to fast tracks to be able to shore up that shortfall that we have right now. So that's the important piece of this particular one. And then just a little bit about our annual program evaluation, again, also known as the APE. We also incorporated bond and COP refinancings, and that's part of the number I mentioned before, updated our fare box revenue, added investment income, and then we had to use base system funding in 2023 to balance the 6-year plan. This, again, is a summary, and the The biggest thing in here again on page, I believe it's line 7 or 8, somewhere in there, is that transfer in 2023 of $32.7 million from our base system to fast tracks. In this particular fast track summary, we have the completion of the Southeast Corridor extension, the North Corridor, and the lines we've already opened, as well as the G line. So all those are incorporated in here. What is not incorporated in this particular document or the long-range plan that you'll see is the 4 remaining corridors that we have left in the Fast Tracks program. Within the planning horizon of 2040, we're not able to see how we would identify funding for that at this time. And I'm going to talk about the long-range plan. So our long-range plan matches your long-range plan, surprise, surprise. It's done out to 2040 to match the RTP. It includes both the base system and fast tracks, so all of our funding sources as well as our expenditures. And in addition to needing it for this board, we're required by our lenders and potential lenders to provide our wherewithal, or show our wherewithal to be able to repay debt. And that includes not only construction but the operating portion of that. So we currently give them a plan that goes out to 2050, which is where our current debt is out on the Fast Tracks program. Major plan elements, we talk about the Fast Tracks corridor construction, and I mentioned some of those, as well as the ongoing operations and maintenance, and we continue to refine those. We're currently now have a year or two under our belt with the University of Colorado A line. We are locked into that agreement with our concessionaire. So we have a kind of a fixed cost that we know there that we're going to do. And we continue to evaluate the costs of operating our other Fast Tracks corridors, like the R line, the W line, and soon to be the North Metro line, as well as the Southeast Corridor extension. So we continue to look at those. Are there ways that we can refine those? Are there ways that we have now actual information that we can look at what that means to that particular corridor?
Let me get a question in real quick. Director Rakowski. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And so one of the things I know you probably have heard about is that in the current January forecast we have some proposed service reductions, and based on those service reductions they would provide different options for funding. What I am showing you today, though, do not have any service reductions in them, and the reason for that is we have not gone through the public comment period. We've not finished that yet. And so until that's done, we will not incorporate any changes that may or may not come out of that. We have decreased revenue forecasts for sale of use and fare box revenues, as well as some increased operating and maintenance costs than our original projections for both the base system and Fast Tracks. Excuse me. In the base system, we're seeing more and more, as I mentioned before, things coming up in the operating category as far instead of capital. And again, that's because of our focus on maintaining what we have instead of expansion. And so you're going to see some changes in that from where we were in the past. Just naturally as we move to more of a operating and maintenance cost both on the base system and Fast Track system. I did want to mention one thing. We use the CU Lead School of Business forecasts. They give us 2 forecasts a year, one in March, one in September. By the time we normally approve the SBP and the 8 process, as well as the long-range plan, we usually do that in September, so it's before we get that forecast. We just received the forecast, and we had postponed approving the SBP and the APE and the long-range plan until October, until we were able to see how some things materialized with our public hearings, etc. With that, I got the 105-page document last night, and it appears from the executive summary that we may see a slight uptick in our revenue forecasts. Assuming that's the case, we'll incorporate that into this document in the next couple weeks, and that might provide some additional relief in that document and for us to reorganize some projects that we had to move out. And one of those projects I'm sure some of you are aware of is the State Highway 119 BRT project. So we currently had that scheduled in 2022. Due to the forecast we had, because we're looking at a $60 million figure, 30 in RTD funds and 30 million in federal funds, it's a large chunk of money we need to have all in at one time. We moved that to 2024, which is right outside of the SPP planning horizon. What we have been telling people is if we can free up dollars, whether it be through a review of our operating costs, or in this case, since we got the sales and use tax and they appear to be higher, we're going to look at trying to move that project back into the 6-year plan. It just depends how things work out over the next few weeks. So hopefully we're able to do that. That's one of the reasons we postponed the adoption from September to October, was to see how some of these things might play out and what that does, and allows us to maybe bring some projects back in. Some of you are familiar with our Fast Tracks internal savings account. We call it the FISA, affectionately. It's an internal account that we have. The board adopted in 2012 a plan that said if we get certain revenues, say from selling property, whether it be on the base system or Fast Tracks, or there's a whole list of things that can happen, savings on projects, those type of things, we'll deposit them in the internal savings account, and hopefully those balances would accumulate enough to be able to finish some of the remaining corridors. We were able to extend some of the corridors with that FISA account, but now we're at the point in the Fast Tracks budget, as I mentioned, that the 0.4% does not cover the operations, maintenance, and finishing the remaining corridors. So we've had to draw down that FISA account and keep it drawn down, and at this point in time it's not, we're not anticipating paying that back between now and 2040 because we need that money strictly to balance the budget at this point in time. And I shouldn't say budget, it's a plan, so the SPP long-range plan and the APE. So this is just a summary. Again, can't read that, but there's some red numbers up there. And that's really to demonstrate that we have not balanced the long-range plan yet. We're anticipating doing that in the next week or two. On the base system, if you look at 2023 on line 26, you can see that we have about $421 million. That's in millions. I'm sorry, in thousands, so it makes it $421 million. Over the entire length of that plan between 2018 and 2040. That would be the good news. The bad news on Fast Tracks is the red numbers go all the way out to 2040, and we're showing an anticipated shortfall out in that time horizon of about $211 million. So at this time what we would do is make a transfer on paper from the base system to Fast Tracks to show that is balanced over that period of time. Because the base system also has some deficits in the near term, we would need to use some of our reserves that we had set aside and use those to cover those deficits, and then hopefully between now and then we have changed direction so we don't get to that point in time. And what I mean by change direction is, as all of you know in this room, we have to do plans out to 2040. That's a really long time. Most people don't even like to do plans next year, past next year. So this gives us a snapshot of where we might be if we continue to go down the path that we're going, whether it be with revenue, whether it be with fair revenue, sales and use tax, not if we want to pursue additional grants, those type of things. And so this is a snapshot in time moving forward with this plan. But as you probably know, it's very useful to do so you know where you're going to be based on your capital costs and your operating costs, as well as your ability to issue any additional debt. The other thing I want to mention in this long-range plan and in the 6-year plan is we have no additional debt being issued at this point in time. So not certificates of participation for buses, not bonds for any additional projects. We just don't have the capacity right now that we can see into the future to be able to do that. For some of you in the financial world, one of our big things we track is our net coverage, revenue coverage on our bonds. Our board has a policy of 1.2 times. You can see that until we get out here quite a ways, we don't get to 1.2 times. That basically means the market right now would probably not allow us to issue additional debt even if we wanted to, because we're not meeting our own bond covenants that the board has set. So we need to get that corrected as soon as possible. And so we'll be continuing to look at ways to increase revenues and decrease expenditures, or a combination of both. I think I've talked about most of these challenges already, but construction operation of our unfunded corridors is Very heavy on our minds. We continue to look for ways to complete those 4 remaining corridors. Completion of the 2 ongoing projects, the Southeast Corridor extension, which I think we're having like a 50% completion thing here shortly. And then we have our North project that needs to be finished. State of good repair, I mentioned that, maintaining what we have. Operating and maintenance of the completed corridors. Always sales and use tax volatility. We have no control over that. The good news, it sounds like things are kind of stabilizing here, even with our very low unemployment, which I believe today the figures were 2.1%, so that's pretty low. Fare box revenues always challenge us, financing capacity, and debt service coverage. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Okay, I have Director Rakowski, then Director Jones.
My treasurer of Arapahoe County does a good job, and on my tax bill for real property, there's a line item for RTD, which tells me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have the statutory and constitutional authority to go to the voters and add in the entire system a millage rate to generate revenue. Is that correct?
Actually, that is true. It's a very little known fact, I think, that we do have property tax assessment. It's 0 right now. You should be. If it's not, somebody else is getting our money.
No, it was 0. It was 0.
Should be 0. In the history of RTD, that's in the enabling legislation. In the history of RTD, we've never exercised that ability. It's really in the case of dire circumstances when your budget does not equal your revenue, or your expenditures don't equal your revenue. I guess one could argue that now, but we have never pursued that property ad valorem type taxing methodology.
And to your knowledge, when was the last time, if ever, the board discussed it?
I've been there 2 years and they have not discussed it.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jones.
I just want to say that I appreciated your comments about RTD working hard to restore the State Highway 119 BRT funding, and I don't want to be overly optimistic about the sound of optimism I heard in your voice, but as I mentioned to you earlier, I also had a talk with Dave Genova, and he sounded slightly more optimistic than I've heard him lately. So thank you for that. I would like to underscore just how important that project is to the Northwest Corridor. It was the #1 priority coming out of the Northwest Area Mobility Study that all of the communities in the Northwest Corridor unanimously agreed that 119 was the top priority. The NAM study was completed because the Northwest Corridor hasn't received its fair due from Fast Tracks yet, and in particular, the recognition that Longmont, the town of Longmont, not to speak for Director Peck, has gotten nothing in terms of mobility benefits from Fast Tracks yet. And so our corridor has prioritized BRT as the short-term mobility fix for the next, hopefully, 5 years until that project's built. So we appreciate any effort that you can bring to bear to make that actually stay on track. So thanks.
Well, I'm definitely more optimistic than when I saw you last week, so as of last night. So we're making progress.
Director Brockett.
Well, Director Jones stole some of my thunder. I was going to say many of the same things. But one question I did have is what opportunities that residents and local governments might have to weigh in on the State Highway 119 and advocate for the reinstatement of those funds back in their originally anticipated time frame.
So you have an opportunity coming up next Tuesday is our regular board meeting, and we have public comment at that board meeting. That would be a very appropriate time to make those statements or send letters. We have another meeting at our Finance and Administration Committee, which would be October 17th, I believe. We don't take public comment there, but you could come and listen to the discussion that we have, and then we're going to be discussing the SBP, the APE, and the long-range plan at that meeting. And then the next board meeting when they'll be voting on that would be October 24th. It's a Tuesday, somewhere a week from the 17th, if I can add. So that would also be a place for final public comment if it doesn't get in there by that point in time to make any last-minute changes. But I think Not that I want to have a long public comment, but I would encourage you to come next Tuesday if you want to make statements, because that will be the best time to be, or send letters, for us to be able to take all those things into consideration as we do our final adjustments.
Thanks very much.
Director Atchison.
Just kind of following up on what I think I heard, the budget you are currently reviewing, or you're currently at, does not include any service reductions.
That is correct. The ones I showed you on the screen do not include any service reductions.
So I know at least for the R line, the W line, those letters of protest against any service reduction, I think, are already en route to you.
That is correct. We have quite a few.
Yep. The North Area Transit Alliance was signed yesterday, coming to you for that, because I signed it. But I would tell you that if there's a service reduction, you're not the decision maker, you're just the messenger. Over what we currently have, while we're trying to build additional riders on these lines and we still have 3 lines not open, it's going to be pretty tough to swallow. And I will relay that message again on Monday when I have lunch with David. But I would tell you, in talking to all the groups around this table, we've got to get a transit system built. Understanding your financial piece, you guys have got to work it out. But we cannot continue to compete nationwide for business or companies or residents if we don't have a transit system. And today, we don't have one. We have pieces of one.
And I think, I could be wrong, Bill, but I believe there's a public hearing on the service changes tomorrow in Aurora, and then another one coming up still before the end of this month.
A number have been publicly noticed.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that too, because there's another opportunity besides the board meeting.
I didn't want to pick on just you. We'll get the bill later.
That's okay. I'm used to being picked on, you know.
So I'm going to get the Director Zabel in just a minute, but since Director Atchison mentioned that, I also wanted to comment, and I'm certainly not going to beat you up because you are not on the Board of Directors, but we do have our public comment period tomorrow night in Aurora for the potential for service reduction on the R line. And I will just make the comment as the representative for the City of Aurora that that line has been open for less than 6 months. We have 7 or 8 new TOD stations on that line, 3 of which currently have multifamily projects under construction that are not open yet, representing about 2,000 households. So if we're looking at any kind of service reduction with 2,000 households under construction, that just seems extremely short-sighted. So whoever from RTD is at that public hearing tomorrow night might have a lot of fan participation. So
we're expecting it. So,
so I think that the meeting location has been moved twice to accommodate more and more people. So I didn't want to make too much of an issue of it because it's just for my community, but Director Atchison bringing it up kind of sparked me to go ahead and say something as well. So Director Zabel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is on the same thing. On those service reductions, how much money are you looking to save?
I think the figure is around, with both the W and the R line, would be around $3.6 million per year.
Okay.
I think that's the number.
Okay.
Director Karras-Graves.
So just like Director Roth, you've said, I'm from Golden, and our meeting is on September 28th, and wanted to just, I mean, it's been in the news and all of that, but we specifically, our city has invested $100,000 in making that last mile connection work in Golden from the Golden Government Center station, and it only works if the service is not reduced. So we are doing everything in our power as a municipality to increase ridership, and our ask, both as a council and as a city, is to stave off those service reductions. Give us a year to build up ridership, and then look at it again. So.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, this was an informational briefing, so there is no action, and I will thank Ms. McKillop for sharing with us. And now we are going to insert agenda item 5 between 11 and 12. So in order to kick this off for the Governor's Task Force on Responder Safety, I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Doug Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you know, we've had quite a bit of discussion about safety on our transportation system here in this room through the years, and highlighted by our 2017 crash report that we did earlier this year. And that even led us to including a new task within our new 2018 to 2019 Unified Planning Work Program, a regional Vision Zero initiative. But we're going to talk about safety from a little bit of a different perspective tonight, talking about first responder safety. And we're very honored to have with us this evening Deputy Chief Mark Savage from the Colorado State Patrol. Is Ryan with you, Deputy Chief? Just you?
Excuse me, sir. It took me a second to figure out who's talking. It's like the voice of God here. And I'm looking around. I'm not that quick. So you probably all figured that out very quickly. Ryan is on his way. We had I sincerely apologize. I know we were on your agenda earlier. We got delayed at the Transportation Commission tonight, and so that did delay us just a little bit.
Well, no worries. You're more than capable.
Oh, I don't know about that.
So I think we're ready when you are, sir.
Great, thank you. So November of 2016 is a date that I want a month specifically that I want to bring to everybody's attention, because it changed a lot of things for the Colorado State Patrol. In the end of November, we lost a trooper on I-25. He was working a crash and was out doing an inventory on a vehicle and was struck and hit by a commercial vehicle that was driving by. Cody Donahue left behind a wife and 2 kids. About a year before that, we lost another trooper not very far from there on I-25. Jamie Jurcevics left behind a brand new son who was about 5 months old and a husband. And then just about 6 months prior to Jamie's death, we lost a trooper up on Highway 66 in Weld County. And the reason why I bring those up is right after Cody's funeral, we were asked a question from our governor's office. He said, well, what are y'all doing? Are you sure you're doing everything right? And he asked us, he said, I want you to take a look at what you're doing and evaluate it and make sure that you're doing the best you can do to make sure that our first responders, our troopers, CDOT workers, police officers, sheriff's deputies, EMTs, and everybody else that is for tow truck drivers are safe. And so we started an effort shortly thereafter and put together a task force, a very multi-jurisdictional task force, where we started to look at really kind of what we do and how we do it and where we can improve. And of course, I'm not following my slides. I sincerely apologize. But anyway, so we put this group together, and there were essentially 6 focus areas. We focused on training, operations, infrastructure, technology, policies and procedures, and communications. And I'm not going to go over, I only have a few minutes, so I'm not going to go over each one individually, but I would like to talk just very briefly on a couple of them. What we found was that police officers, state troopers, sheriff's deputies we train for our discipline. Firefighters, they train for their discipline. EMTs and CDOT employees, they all train for their disciplines and specifically what their goals and objectives are. For police officers, it might be evidence, because we look at a traffic crash often as a chargeable offense, and somebody needs to be held accountable so that we can prevent those from happening in the future. Not to say that we don't look at other things, but CDOT looks at them from a different perspective. They look at that let's get traffic moving. We want commerce and we want traffic to continue flowing. And firefighters, they look at it from a completely different perspective. They they want to get there and save lives. Same with EMTs. And tow drivers, a different perspective as well. And what we found is that the training and the perspectives that we come into these incidents with, whether it be a traffic crash or anything, any incident on our highways, is very, very different. And even the training was different. Our operations were different. And we didn't necessarily come at it from a one scene, one culture perspective. In other words, where everybody's got the same goals and objectives. We ultimately do, but we have very different ways of getting there. And in our effort, we had several responders, over 200 from statewide, participate. And if you go to the next slide, please. We really found that we had a lot to do. We had a pretty big gap. And we also looked nationally. We looked at how many first responders. I don't know if you know this, but the number one cause of death for law enforcement officers is traffic crashes. And you can see the stats up here, responder exposure at a glance. According to FHWA, there's been several of our first responders that have been killed on our roadways. So this is a very compelling story. This is a very compelling reason to do what we're doing, and obviously it's something that we need to get done very, very quickly. Well, I already talked about this one. So we also have a ton of, if you go to the next slide, we have a ton of traffic on our highways, and it's not getting any worse. And you know, you've probably heard this from numerous resources. You guys are transportation planners. You know better than anybody. You can't really build out of it. I live in Arvada, and I live up northwestern Arvada, and Indiana is kind of a mess, as is every other street in the city and in the state. And we're growing. We're bursting at the seams, and so it's very difficult. And when Ryan gets here, he'll tell you this. It's very difficult to build out of this. So really what we need to do is try and figure out ways to mitigate and reduce this type of traffic in a different way. At the same time, because we are building, our shoulder, the room where we actually do our work, it's decreasing because we're putting in more lanes for traffic. And so for those first responders that are out there on the highways, it's becoming ever more dangerous and more challenging for them as well. So next slide. So really, what's our goal? Our end goal is to have one scene, one culture in order to save lives. We value human lives first. It is absolutely essential. That's the Colorado State Patrol's goal, is to reduce traffic crashes and save lives. It's the exact same goal of everybody else. And really what we want to do is develop a one scene, one culture, saves lives perspective. So everybody that's responding from different disciplines, whether they be a firefighter, tow operator, police officer, EMT, whatever, the goal should be the same, and that's to clear the scene as quickly as possible and have a command structure in place prior to getting there, and that when I respond as a police officer, as a state trooper, I know what the firefighter's responsibilities are, the tow operator's responsibilities are, so that there isn't any confusion and we're not crossing lines of communication prior to getting there. And we're really working together as a team. So we put together this task force, and the task force had several recommendations. There's numerous recommendations, a lot having to deal with training and operations and how we can align our training and operations in order to accomplish these objectives. But we really had two overarching recommendations, and the first one was the state should establish and fund a permanent multidisciplinary standing committee on first responder safety, led by CSP, responsible for achieving a one scene culture by executing unified and comprehensive updates to training, operations, policies and procedures, communications infrastructure, including technological advances. So really, after we got these recommendations, and it became abundantly clear that there's really one organization in the state that has a statewide footprint that can establish a statewide one scene, one culture approach, and that's the State Patrol. And it's not a knock on any other agency, but we are the one law enforcement agency that really has that does patrol, that has a statewide footprint. And so it came down to making sure that we can get this done on a statewide basis, and we decided that it needed to be done by the State Patrol. And I'm sure many of you heard of Traffic Incident Management, or TIMS. This is very, very similar, very much in alignment. In fact, a lot of the effort that went into this was, a lot of the recommendations that came out of this came from TIMS. They came from the same philosophy, and really my chief says it very well. He says, I want to take TIMS and I want to go beyond. I want to take it one step further. I want to make it more compelling, so that people can understand why we're doing this. And that's how I started off, and Ryan's here, that's how I started off my presentation, is talking about that. I want to send a compelling message because, to be honest with you, I was the one that, I was one of the two people that did the death notification on Cody's wife, and I don't ever want to have to do that again. That's not something I ever want to do again. So I believe truly that if we can get some of these things done, that we can save these lives. So in addition to the State Patrol leading the effort, we need the support of our partner agencies. And you know, you've probably heard this before, but this is not an effort where the state or the federal government's going to come in and we're going to tell you how it's going to be run and we're going to do it. This is going to be a collaborative effort to get these goals and objectives accomplished, and we really think that if we can do it from a partnership approach, we can get it done. And really, it's about aligning our operational philosophies and our operational practices with how we train. So we can no longer work. We can no longer work. Got it. We can no longer work without our partners. This has to be done in collaboration with everybody that we do this. And so the second recommendation is to improve first responder safety. All responders, you got it up there, perfect. To improve first responder safety, all responders and the traveling public must take steps to eliminate, reduce, and minimize exposures to the active traffic. So the first recommendation really dealt with internally. It dealt with the first responders themselves. There's another component to this, and that component is the public. The public shares in a responsibility in accomplishing this. I know you probably have seen we've had a campaign effort, a Move Over campaign recently to raise awareness, but it's campaigns like that, and we really want to emphasize to the public that there are things that you can do to make us all safe. There are things that you can do to make sure that the traffic gets cleared more quickly and more efficiently. Also, from our perspective, we can conduct our work with as minimal exposure to traffic as humanly possible. Secondary crashes as well. We want to get those initial crashes cleared as quickly as possible, because we know the longer we delay, the more chance we are going to have of a secondary crash. So really, next slide, what are we looking to do? We're looking to make change, and I know that this can be a challenge, particularly in law enforcement. We have a tendency to not really like change so much. Probably that's probably not unique to law enforcement, but maybe it's a human characteristic. But we sure don't do well with change. But this is a change that needs to happen. It's a culture change. It's a change that we're not going to argue about who's going to be the incident commander on scene. We're all there together, regardless of what your discipline, what discipline you come from. And really, it's a culture change that we want to have so that we can save lives. So there are a couple of things that you can do. Obviously, we're all responsible for public safety. We're all responsible for traffic safety. So what I ask that you do is obviously tell your friends whenever possible, don't stop in or near traffic. Pull as far off the road as you can. Certainly don't change your tire on the side of the road unless you absolutely have to. Drive a car to a safer place. No cost savings equals the value of your life. Move your crash if appropriate. We really want people to get out of the road. And if you're standing on the side of the road, stay in your car with your seatbelt on. Also, the other thing that, because this is a metropolitan planning organization, this effort is going to be going statewide here, probably around November and shortly thereafter in January. We'd like to, and this is part of the reason why I'm here today, and this is my ask, and so if you haven't listened to anything I've said, this is it. Ask your folks that work for you to please get involved and be a positive support, because it's going to save their lives. It's going to save our lives. I don't ever want to have to go through what I have to again. I know that the police officers and the firefighters feel the exact same way. And CDOT's in the same boat. They lost David Morris was killed on Monarch Pass about 2.5 years ago as well. So when this effort starts going, we're going to use the infrastructure that's currently in place, the TIMS, the regional planning committees, and the TIMS statewide working group as leverage, and we're going to use those already established groups to rebuild this effort and to make it become a permanent fixture, a permanent culture change for the Colorado State Patrol and our partner agencies as we work to reduce crashes. So you know what, that is my very brief overview. I want to say thank you, and just if we could end on one scene, one culture, save lives, that's really all I have. And by the way, you know, we are all about Twitter today. So there is my Twitter feed. I had to promise my media person that I would say that. And so there it is, so you can follow me. The other thing I do want to emphasize and talk, and then I'll turn it over to Ryan Rice from CDOT, who is our partner in this effort, is the State Patrol is very committed to this effort, and we have assigned a a captain within our organization to lead this effort on a statewide basis. He is here with me tonight, and I'd like to have Captain Matt Secor stand up, just so you know who he is. He is the gentleman that's going to be leading this effort for the Colorado State Patrol. So we've committed our own resources to this, to making this happen. So I wanted to introduce him. I apologize. The other person that I want to introduce is Major Tim Keaton. Tim is up in northern Colorado. He is the gentleman that you saw on the TV talking about the eclipse. Yeah, that's him. Famous right there. He will be doing autographs. Hopefully it's not an autograph on a ticket, but he'll be doing autographs here in just a little bit. So he is up in northern Colorado and is really taken this Tim's philosophy, this first responder task force philosophy, and actually already implemented it. They're doing some amazing things up in northern Colorado that we'd like to duplicate statewide. So, Ryan?
Good evening, everyone. Just to echo a couple of comments of Colonel Savage. Number one, the loss of life. We've experienced that in CDOT, like he mentioned a couple of years ago, and the risks that are out there, they're significant. And there's a lot that outside of incidents, there's a lot of this effort that CDOT can take and learn from in our work zone management efforts and things like that that are really critical. And on top of this effort, Mark talked specifically about the traffic incident management program and things like that. We'll obviously be there shoulder to shoulder with them and the rest of our partners in this effort on advancing that. But then there's the infrastructure and technology side that we're really hopeful on, that we think there's some huge opportunities to make some big improvements for first responder safety. On the more physical infrastructure side, we're integrating this into our process where we review projects. Every single CDOT project is reviewed for its safety and operations, and recommendations are made to the project. So we're adding this to that process and do better consideration and coordination, collaboration with state and local first responders for projects and looking at what improvements could be made. This could be something as simple as just creating a little bit more shoulder area. The shoulder areas in rural areas specifically are slim. So creating more shoulder area, designated pull-off areas, things like that may not be a $10 million improvement, but still could be something that can be life-saving in its end result. On the technology side, there's a host of different things. A lot of you have heard about our RoadX program and our partnership with Panasonic and that project where we aim to hopefully deploy a really robust connected vehicle environment in Colorado. That is a system that can directly apply to first responder safety. Systems that can be in first responder vehicles, even on their person potentially, and giving that data out into the world, into other connected vehicles where they know they're approaching an emergency response vehicle. They may even be able to know that there's a person out there on the road. They'll know which side of the road, down to that level of detail and accuracy. So exciting things there that connected vehicles. We talk about safety a lot with connected vehicles, but the first responder safety part honestly could be one of the earliest areas where it provides the most benefits. On top of that, looking at just leveraging our existing technology infrastructure that we have with our fiber optic network, our camera network, and using all those things to their maximum benefit. We have a robust camera network, and we are implementing a video analytics system that basically reads the video feed 24/7 and can detect a stopped vehicle, wrong way vehicle, sudden change in traffic speeds. That's something that we can use and leverage for automated alerts and response from our operations and dispatch centers. And then, getting it out, stuff like we already have, variable message signs. Nothing high tech, very old piece of technology, but just synthesizing the data and the awareness on where first responders are and the severity and hazard of their particular location, being able to just message that in a more automated fashion to the public. And through that, not just variable message signs, but data that goes out there that can go to the traveler information, mobile applications as well that people use on smartphones. So lots of things that we're going to endeavor to pursue on the CDOT side as it relates to technology and infrastructure. There's great opportunity there. We're confident we can hopefully make some improvements in the future.
So
thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come and talk in front of you. We sincerely appreciate it, and if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy, Ryan, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
So first of all, I want to thank you for the presentation, and to the troopers, thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. And I'm assuming, since the commander is the eclipse expert, that when he gives his autograph, it's going to be on a black sheet of paper?
Exactly, you won't be able to see it.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Questions or comments from the board? Director Atchison, and then, hold on, I got to write down. Go ahead, Director Atchison.
Thank you. Chief, as you roll this out, a couple of things that come to mind. The local Chiefs Association, I don't know how far statewide. I know it's pretty active here on the local area. My recommendation is get in front of them.
Yes, sir.
What I don't know is about the fire chiefs. I don't know if they have the same level of association here in the metro area or on a statewide basis. They may. Rick indicates they do. Again, another group that I think you need to be standing in front of. Not you, your designee, or the eclipse guy.
He's already famous.
Yeah, you might as well take.
He looks a lot better on camera than I do anyway, so.
But I think from all of us, let us know how we can help. You're absolutely right. This is important to all of us. If we save one life, whatever we do, that benefits us all. But good luck on the program. Thank you for coming. As Bob said tonight, we appreciate that. But we're looking forward, I think all of us, to try to reduce traffic safety problems on our highways.
Very good advice, sir. Yes, thank you. We will absolutely do that.
So quite a few hands went up. I want to make sure I've got Director Montoya, Walton, Stolzman, and Partridge. Anybody else? Not Director Stolzman. Okay. Anybody else? Director Montoya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question, more of a comment. One of the most important keys that I tell my son to life is adaptability, because change is constant. And so I appreciate your willingness to be adaptable in this change. And I'll tell you now, Thornton is committed to this philosophy, and so we got your back, and we're here to, like Mayor Hutchinson said, or Director Hutchinson, we're here to help however we can. So
thank you.
And thank you for your effort.
Thank you very much.
Leadership here.
Director Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. I'm over here.
Thank you. Sorry. I don't know who Director Walton is. And by the way, which one of you is DRCOG? I just want to meet that person. Who is that?
This is DRCOG.
Come on now. You know those guys dared me at dinner to ask that. They really did. Yeah. They owe me coffee now. Sorry, Director.
That's fine. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your presentation. I have one comment and one question. I think that the youth are very influential, and so as the mother of two children, one who will be in driver's ed in the next year, I will definitely be taking these messages home and modeling the behavior. I wanted to ask, or maybe more encourage, as I always do in Lafayette with our first responders, that for those scenes that are particularly traumatic, that I hope that the officers responding are getting a lot of support on the back end so that they can return promptly to service.
You know, that's I'm really glad you brought that up. In law enforcement, and I'm just going to go down a little bit of rabbit hole. We have not always been great at that, because we're tough, right? And we see it all. But we have learned, unfortunately, as a result of these line of duty deaths, we have learned through practice that is an absolute essential component of it, not just for the officers, but for their families as well. So, great comment. Thank you.
Director Partridge.
Chief Savage, thank you for all the information. How are you?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you certainly for all the information, all you do, and I really want to commend you in many, many ways. I'm Commissioner from Douglas County, and as you mentioned, condolences for the officers that were lost on I-25 South. Those were both in Douglas County between Castle Rock and Monument. I chair the I-25 Gap Coalition, and I say that because it's very important to this group, because that area, that road is in this COG's territory, but is not on our long-term plan, which I'll be coming to the board, and as the executive director is smiling and knows, we've had many conversations. It's a major factor for us. And in Douglas County, not because I do have two boys in law enforcement, do I really care about what you guys do. It's our whole engineering department that really is working with CDOT to address this, and our sheriff's office. As you know, our sheriff's office has worked with you on patrolling that area, not just in manpower, but funding and what we've done for some of the ancillary roads, and our $6.5 million emergency vehicle operations center that we just put the money into and just opened up this year. And as you mentioned, TIMS, we will have a TIMS system coming there shortly, because we really value what you do, know the challenges. And I think we will certainly be contacting you to help you, but also help us, because it really comes down to what we know is funding. And I'm going to say it's approaching the legislature and the governor and to say the funding needs to be there in these areas that you know, you identify that are dangerous, and it just has to be, have the goal to take it to the voters and say, you guys need this support. So thank you for being here, sir.
Well, thank you. You know, it's interesting. It's unfortunate, and maybe it's the human element to this, but the TIMS effort, one of the big initiatives that got TIMS going in Tennessee was a result of, like you and I were just talking about, was a result of a crash that occurred, I believe it was near, I want to say Nashville, but it might have been Memphis, where there was a concert getting out, and these two brother-sister were college age, were coming out of the concert, and they got into the traffic queue, and they got hit by a semi, and they were both killed. And the father of those two children made it his goal to change the culture in Tennessee. And as a result of that, a lot of changes were made. It's unfortunate sometimes that that's what requires change in the human condition, but you know, if that's what gets it done, then that's what we're going to do. So the other thing I do want to mention, and I don't know if Ryan wants to talk a little bit about this, but the State Patrol and CDOT are moving forward, hopefully with that traffic incident management track at Douglas County. So I want to thank you very much for that partnership, because what that is going to give us is it's going to give us an opportunity to bring first responders from multiple disciplines together to train at the same location, as opposed to just on a tabletop. We're going to have a facility where we can go out there and we can roll over vehicles and we can respond in. Yeah, that sounds like fun, doesn't it? No one gets hurt, though. We'll be able to respond as a unit, not just as a police officer, as a firefighter, but everybody's going to respond together, and we'll have trainers there. It's one of the efforts that the State Patrol is committed to providing trainers so that we can learn and train together as one unit, because we're out there handling these incidents as a team together. Training together only makes sense. So thank you for that effort.
So, Deputy Chief, I realized I could have helped you out if I did this more often. Director Pfeiffer. That way you know where to look.
No, he's my mayor. That is one person I know. So.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, but also he got promoted since last time I've seen him.
That's true.
I think you're now Deputy Chief.
That's correct.
I just want to echo what everyone else is saying, which is obviously thank you and your troopers for your service. You know, the thing that we just talked about this in Arvada on Monday night about, we had a lot of citizens come talk to us about a 6-car pileup where we had a DUI cross Ward Road and killed some grandparents and a lady, and the driver of the DUI ended up passing away as well. So 4 deaths, and then we had 100-mile-per-hour through a residential DUI chase the next day, and then a pedestrian hit on Wadsworth that same day, and just several things all at one time. So we had a lot of citizens show up about our efforts within the city of traffic enforcement and DUI enforcement. Knowing that traffic is increasing, I'm not sure we can stay up with it. You know, we have over 36 vacancies in our police department. You know, we can't staff our traffic unit to the level we need to be effective. I'm advocating for a DUI task force that's more specific to our city, not necessarily just countywide. So I'm sure the state patrol's feeling that same pressure of your traffic's doing this, and you just don't have enough troopers to get out there. So I kind of echo some of the things that Director Partridge was saying, which is hopefully we can advocate to. We're going to need more troopers out there to help enforce the traffic laws to create our roadways a little bit safer, because we sit here at DRCOG and talk a lot about capacity and operations, but we need to start bringing in the public safety aspect of that, because we all drive on it, and public safety includes us being safe on those roads and none of us dying. So, you know, I hope that through this presentation and hearing some of Mr. Rice's technology, which I have to applaud, I think the Courtesy Patrol, are they under you? I think the new trucks and their effort on the highways, top shelf, high visibility, I think they've done a huge amount of service just them being out there protecting us when we're stranded on the highway. So with that and technology and public safety and CDOT kind of changing with the wind of bringing technology in, I think that will get to a good place. And I'm glad and I applaud you both for looking forward. And we can't keep widening roads everywhere. We can't keep, pulling people over every minute of the day like some people would like. So, we got to figure out a smarter way. She wants to be pulled over. She lives by you. She lives by you. So if you see her car, it's an unmarked white police car looking car. So if that's her, pull her over. She complains to me about unmarked police cars. She does. And we ignore her. She gets mad that our escape might pull her over. You feel the love, my constituents. But I just had some comments, not really a statement, just more of an awareness for the rest of the board of how complex this issue is, and I applaud you doing it. And if we can help out in any way, I think we need your help too to help our officers understand. Our officers are very young. I think all of us are feeling that. They're all coming out, and sometimes they're not aware. They're not self-aware of what they're doing when they're on the highway or even on a major road like Ward or Wadsworth or whatever. So anything we can do as well. And PSAs, we'll put them on our Channel 8s. We all have Channel 8s. If you come up with any, please give them to us. Let us put them out.
So that's a great point. Two comments that I'll make, and one in regards to staffing. Yeah, I think every law enforcement agency in the state's facing it right now. We have a remarkably good economy in the state, and law enforcement doesn't exactly pay as well as some other jobs, and it's shift work, and it's a challenging job, and it takes a unique individual, and so we're all struggling in that regard. Just recruiting the right type of people that want to be a member of their community and problem solve with their community. But then the second thing is I do want to emphasize that a major component of this effort is a media campaign that is directed at multiple target age groups, all of them, and it's going to be developed by the Colorado State Patrol, and it's going to be scalable, and it's going to be easily implementable, so that anybody, the police chief in Haxton, Colorado, can pick it up and do something with it. And hopefully we'll be able to get that done here very soon. We have someone working on it, though.
And maybe DRCOG can assist with getting the word out. Thank you.
Director Karis Graves.
Thank you. As everyone else has said, I'm from Golden. I know our police department is doing everything they can to assist, because we're right there. We're a gateway city, so yeah. But the thing, so DUI, distracted driving, is the thing that I just wanted to mention. Our police department did an analysis of our accidents and found that over 70% of the accidents that occur within our city limits are due to distracted driving of some kind. It's not just the device, but it's eating in the car, it's reaching for something, it's, so distracted driving was responsible for over 70% of our accidents. I think that's actually consistent at the state level as well. So, I mean, that's something that is across all levels. And mentioning of technology, I happen to be a Mac girl, and so the latest iOS 11 upgrade has a little feature which I used on the way here. It disables all notifications while I'm driving. It senses that I'm driving, and it turns off all notifications. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a Mac product, but an app that turns off your notifications when you're driving would be useful. Might save a life or two.
Yeah, that's great. That type of technology is absolutely wonderful. It's a double-edged sword, right? Technology. It certainly has made us more effective and more efficient, but there's there's certainly drawbacks. I'm an avid cyclist. I ride both road and mountain, and boy, I tell you, it's scary. I've been riding for 15 years now, and just the close calls they go up. So I'll be honest, I've been riding more on my mountain bike than my road bike lately. So I get it. Thank you.
So, curiosity question. I think that everybody here is a strong advocate for being your advocates, your cheerleaders in our communities. And I'm curious if you're available to do presentations to individual municipalities, and if so, can you leave your contact information so that we can
absolutely
probably? Oh, Twitter.
Twitter.
handle, yeah, true.
We should have put my email. I have business cards. I will leave them with you, and certainly you can. And that absolutely is the case. We are going to probably roll this out in November. Looking at Colorado State Patrol history, November is the deadliest month for state troopers. So we think it's very timely that we roll this out in November, and then the effort will get going from there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other, Director Montoya?
I apologize. I did actually have a question over here. Deputy Chief, you're right.
Sorry, I didn't.
I told you guys I wasn't that smart.
I'm sorry.
I actually did have one quick question. I know you've been here for a while, but the exposure rates that you showed, is that for the whole state of Colorado? Or because it's from the FHWA,
Yeah.
is that a federal number or?
That would be those are national numbers.
National numbers, okay. Thank you.
So I made that comment, and then I didn't help you out, but I'm going to. Director Partridge.
Mr. Chair, Chief Savage actually just gave me a great idea. This is coming out in November. You've got 57 members right here that all have resolutions or notices in city and county meetings. I think it'd be great. I will be very pleased to take that to our board, but I think maybe that's something we all can do to make that a visible outlet.
That's a great idea, and I wouldn't even have thought of something like that. So thank you. We'll, you know what we can do? I don't know. I know the folks behind me are probably taking notes, but we can coordinate whatever. And like I said, I'll leave some business cards. I brought a small stack, and if you don't get one, we can certainly get it from DRCOG staff.
And I'm wondering if it might be best to work through our sheriffs and police chiefs.
Absolutely.
To have them bring that to us.
That we can do that too.
Other questions or comments? Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
So we're on to agenda item 12, which is under attachment E. It tells us there that our presenter is Robert Spots, but it's actually Executive Director of RAC, Ken Lloyd. So, Ken, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give you an update tonight on the proposed plan for implementing the Volkswagen. Make that a show. There you go. Way to go, Doug. I'm here tonight on behalf of our partners at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Colorado Energy Office. We've been working together to develop this plan over the last several months. I think you've had a presentation on this settlement before, but this is a result of a cheating scandal that Volkswagen did nationally, where they defeated the devices on diesel vehicles to control NOx emissions. They got caught. There are people who are in jail for that now, but they've also spending multi-million dollars in mitigation projects around the country to try to make up for that. I'm going to talk a little more detail about a $2.9 billion trust fund nationally, of which you're going to get about $69 million here in the state of Colorado. But in addition to that, Volkswagen is also spending over $10 billion nationally to buy back a lot of these vehicles that had the altered devices. Anyone who's been on South I-25, south of Colorado Springs at the Pikes Peak Raceway, there's a big graveyard there of a bunch of Volkswagen diesel vehicles. Also, Volkswagen, through an entity that they control called Electrify America, is spending an additional $2 billion throughout the country on the investment for zero-emission vehicles, building an infrastructure throughout the country to fund primarily electric vehicles. We will be getting about around $10 million of that, but that's under the control of Volkswagen and Electrify America. We're working with them, but that will go towards building a charging network along the corridors of the state, as well as community chargers here in the Denver metro area. We were one of 11 areas that were selected for that program. So this next slide, the guy at the health department who put this together is an attorney, so he kind of likes all this legal stuff. But I'm gonna boil this down. There's some deadlines and timelines in this program, but just earlier this week, the judge signed the final trust agreement. That will be issued probably by the end of the month, which then starts the process for states requesting money. Here in the state of Colorado, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment will be the beneficiary, so they're the ones who are managing the overall project and handling the money. We can submit our plan for how we're going to spend this money probably within the next 3 to 4 months. So we should probably be accepting projects early in 2018. So this is kind of the essence of what the program is. The actual settlement lays out the types of projects that can be funded. It's mainly to get diesel vehicles off the road and use either cleaner diesel, alternative fuels, or electric. And so what we've done with this program is break it up into various components. There's going to be one component which the Regional Air Quality Council will manage, dealing with alternative fuel trucks and buses. It'll be very similar to a program that we currently run called Alt Fuels Colorado, where we're doing this along the Front Range, where we're going to be spending about $18 million to fund alternative fuel vehicles, either compressed natural gas, propane, or electric. And so it'll be run very similar to a program that we currently run. The other big part of this will be another $18 million, which will be devoted to transit buses. And this particular program will be run by the Colorado Department of Transportation through their normal consolidated call for projects where they use sources of funding to fund buses throughout the state. And this will be primarily for CNG and electric buses, and again, another $18 million towards that. The other part will be an additional investment in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, about $10 million. That's the maximum amount that we as a state can spend on that as a part of the trust. But here again, that will be used to supplement the funding that's currently available to build the system of electric vehicle charging stations throughout the state and in communities as well. And then finally, there's a $5 million pot that's called the DARA option. This is the federal program, the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, which provides funding to the state. But with this, we can fund off-road engines and other devices like that, and that will be implemented by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I would mention that the EV Charger program will be implemented through our current Charge Ahead Colorado program. That's a program that we implement concurrently with the Colorado Energy Office, where we currently fund electric vehicle charging infrastructure, not only here in the metro area, but throughout the state. And then we're also reserving about $12 million in this, what we call flex funds. We're not allocating all of the money at the start, but we're going to see where the demand is and where the market takes us and where the interest comes, and we'll allocate those that funding later on. So we've got a very balanced program here in terms of looking at all the eligible types of vehicles and a variety of fuels and on projects. So under the trust, there are various projects you can fund. This is basically focused on medium-duty and heavy-duty vehicles, class 4 through 8. It can't fund private vehicles, can't fund light-duty trucks, but it's mainly medium-duty and heavy-duty vehicles. Airport ground equipment is also eligible, so we've had conversations with folks at DIA about their interest in maybe electrifying some of the ground support equipment there, and also some locomotive switchers on yards. That's a tough industry to kind of crack, but we're having some discussions there as well. There are limits in the trust about how much you can spend for private or public vehicles. Basically, through this program, what we're looking to do is cover 110% of the incremental cost of a alternative fuel vehicle, as well as the cost of the lost resale, because as part of this program, you have to retire or scrap an old diesel vehicle of similar size to get funding for this program. So we've got some pretty generous in incentives there. We have higher incentives for public fleets. Fleets will pay about 40% of the cost of an alternative fuel vehicle, and there are good incentives for electric vehicles there, especially on the bus side. Through the funding incentive here, you can probably, local transit providers can get a CNG or electric bus for less outlay of their funds than a diesel bus. We've had conversations with RTD. They're certainly interested in this here locally, but also other transit operators throughout the state. And then again, the charging stations will be run very similar to what we currently do, but it'll be throughout the state. And we're really trying to focus on the fast chargers along the corridor so that we are linked between Colorado and our neighboring states up and down I-25 and I-70 moving forward. This is a map of where all the vehicles, the Volkswagen vehicles, where I'm located. One of the requirements of the trust is that we do try to focus these efforts in what are called areas of disproportionate impact, either where the vehicles were, where we've got our air quality problems, or where there are environmental justice concerns. As you can see here, where the vehicles were essentially is the same area as our ozone non-attainment area, so the reductions in NOx emissions will help us there. We're not setting any caps on particular areas of the state, but this will be a statewide program, but we expect most of the interest and most of the action will be along the front range, and that's where we're going to be getting most of the interest here. The electric vehicle chargers, again, we're trying to develop a statewide network there so people can get where they need to go. This plan was released at the end of August. There was a public meeting held just earlier this week on Monday, about a 3-hour meeting where we got information and testimony from a lot of interested stakeholders. I think we got a positive reception to this plan overall. I think people are pleased with the balance of it and how we're moving forward here. I think people who are proponents of electrification of the fleet like the investment and commitment in electric, but our CNG and propane industry like the fact that they're still at the table and there's some opportunities there. Our friends in the trucking industry would like us to fund more diesel vehicles, but this is really an alternative fuels program moving forward. So CDPHE will be accepting comments on this plan through October 13th. Again, we'll take those comments, finalize this plan, and submit it to the trust probably by the end of the year or early next year. CDPHE has a website that you can find more information and where the plan itself is posted. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and hopefully get your interest in moving forward. We've worked with many of the communities here around the table, especially on the electric vehicle side of things, providing charging stations, Aurora, Westminster, Boulder County, Denver, Boulder, Longmont, and a lot. And so we want to work with every community in the metro area to expand this network. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Director Teal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in terms of the vehicle replacement program, it sounds to me like that's more focused on heavy-duty vehicles, even fire equipment. Have you really categorized that, or is it really? Hang on, let me put it this way. This is a question from staff in Castle Rock pertaining to the fleet vehicle replacement. So yeah, we've got a lot of diesel vehicles that we have plowing streets, dropping sand, is that where the focus is?
It's medium and heavy duty vehicles, and so it's both public and private fleets. So you're, I think the way this is kind of playing out in the transit area, electric is a prime opportunity there. In looking at heavy duty trucks like dump trucks or refuse trucks, CNG or propane are probably the most viable alternatives right now. But those are the types of vehicles that we are looking for. I mean, we currently do those vehicles under our current program, our All Fuels Colorado program. So we fund a lot of dump trucks, refuse trucks, delivery vehicles as part of that.
So really going to an alternate fuel option as opposed to a hybrid electric gas, electric diesel.
There is an opportunity for some hybrid here as well, you know, like a CNG hybrid or even an electric hybrid. You know, there's some opportunities there for some hybrid vehicles as well.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jones.
Thanks, Ken. Always good to see you. I had one question for you and then one question for Doug. I know I think generally I've only heard favorable comments about this plan, so kudos to you and folks that have worked on that. There had been some discussion about whether or not there's a possibility to partner with Excel on helping out, getting them to help out with some of the electrification for the charging stations, which can be sometimes half the cost of installing EV charging stations, under the, I guess, the theory that they benefit because those charging stations provide some grid stability. Most charging happens at night when demand is low. Are you aware of any discussions with Excel, or have you had any about partnering with them?
There have been some discussions with Excel, you know, through our normal program, Charge Ahead Colorado. We haven't had any recent discussions about them bringing money to the table, and I'm helping fund this. I think that's something that we can certainly do. One of the big issues with Excel and other utilities now is the load charges. I mean, you're right. I mean, some of these may, you know, be charging at night when the load's low, but especially with these DC fast chargers, they are using they are charging when the demand is high, and so that's been a prohibitive factor in some areas, are these load charges. So there was a study that Denver did for us, which you're familiar with, that identified that as a barrier that, you know, we need to do more work on to try to deal with the load chargers to make electric a real option. So.
That's helpful. I imagine most of like the level 2 charging for fleets would be happening in the evening.
Right.
Yep. So then a question for Doug. As I recall, DRCOG sent in a comment letter.
Correct.
To help with the formation of this plan. Have we commented at the September 18th meeting, or do we have plans to send in comments suggesting that this plan pretty much, I think, aligns with the letter we sent earlier, and that we should support it?
Yeah, it does. We did not attend the September 18th meeting, and at the direction of the board, we would be happy to provide comment. From staff's perspective, we were very pleased with the direction of this plan, so we'd be happy to do so.
I don't know how others feel, but I think that would be a useful thing.
Yep. I think head nod. Okay.
Kind of a consensus on that, everybody? Seeing lots of heads going up and down. Okay.
Great. Thank you. We'll do so.
I saw another hand. Where was it? Oh, Director Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question regarding the locations of some of the charging stations in context of some things that are happening across the country and around the world with the earthquake in Mexico and the torrential rains and hurricanes. I've actually read a couple of articles recently about charging stations and their impacts by these natural disasters. And so I'm just curious about whether we've kind of studied placement and how it maps to resiliency for Colorado, given the challenges we have with flooding and other things. There are a number of people who are stranded with electric vehicles who didn't have access to charging stations and the appropriate sort of exit routes in their communities. But anyway, just a quick flag for further consideration.
Other questions or comments? Director Montoya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually just in Pueblo yesterday, so I saw the graveyard that you spoke of. It's massive. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it is massive. So maybe you said this, I might have misheard or not heard you. Did you say what's going to happen with those vehicles that are in that graveyard?
Well, consumers had the option of either getting money and giving their vehicle back to Volkswagen, or they could get it fixed. So there's some who are choosing to get it fixed or just took the money and didn't do anything with it. I think those vehicles there, that Volkswagen will be looking at which ones they can make the changes to and possibly resell them. But you know, they've got graveyards. Like I saw a similar one up in the state of Michigan, you know, at some old football stadium there, that, you know, those are all around the country right now.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ken. Agenda item 13, committee reports. Item A, stack, Director Jones.
So we had a discussion about the infra grants, which are the replacement for the fast lane grants. There's 1.56 billion, mostly for large projects, which are defined as 100 million. Applications are due November 2nd, and so CDOT's looking at submitting for 2 large projects. Local governments are also allowed to submit theirs. I understand the North Front Range is submitting for the I-25 North Gap project. We also had this same presentation on the VW settlement, and we also had a update on the Alt Fuels Colorado program, and unanimously approved recommended changes to the program to make it work better, specifically getting rid of the co-location requirement that required EV charging to happen where CNG charging happens. Those two uses are very different, and so the thought is the program will work better if we separate that. We talked about the multimodal freight plan, and then updated the revenue projections for CDOT for 2045 by, there was a robust discussion over what the penetration of EV vehicles would be by then, and the thought was that we needed to up it to something closer to 25%, although that was considered conservative as well. So those are the highlights.
Thank you. Metro Mayor's Director Atchison.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple of things that are still going on, as we've talked about here on several times, regional transportation authorities, the RTAs, that discussion continues. We are aware of one that's in the process now that will involve Adams County and Aurora for the area east of DIA. The other piece of that we have talked about whether or not we would be going back to the legislature with a transportation bill in 2018. No. But there will be a bill. But it will be done through petition process. We will ignore the legislature because we've got the same legislator sitting in there that was there this year. The effort is being partly funded through CCA and the contractors, but it will be led through the Denver Chamber. They voted through their membership about 2 weeks ago now that they have agreed to take the lead on that. So there will be a petition process for a bill to go on the ballot in 2018 regarding transportation funding. It will probably be very similar to 1242 that was presented to the legislature this past year.
So I'm going to tag onto that real quick. So I was at the board meeting for Associated General Contractors in Fort Collins this morning, and although Associated General Contractors typically represent vertical builders, not horizontal builders, they have chosen to get in the middle of that fray as well, because, you know, any construction that we can find funding for is good for the entire industry. So AGC Colorado is going to be active in that as well.
I think the other thing that is going on too, be aware that some legislators have not given up on the elevated I-70 project. There's still discussion. If Eva faints, somebody get a paramedic. There's another move to try to move that project, to stall it, kill it, and move it over to 270. I don't know how long they're going to keep this up, how many more times, but the ROD, everything has been approved from the federal and the state levels. The contractors have been identified and hired. This project needs to move forward. We need to get it done sooner than later, and I know that's not going to sit well with a lot of people who are affected by it, but we've got to fix transportation systems in this state.
Okay, Metro Area County Commissioners, Director Partridge.
We are following Congress's schedule, so we still are on recess. No.
Very good. Very good.
Actually, we take the summer off. We actually have a meeting Friday, so next meeting I will have a report.
Thank you. Jayla, are you pinch hitting for Director Cernanek?
I am.
Or
I'm going
vice
to be a lot
versa?
of information. I bet I can do it faster than Phil.
There could be no meeting. Oh.
I love him. He's a great advocate for aging. So we're really, really busy when we talked about our new programs. It wasn't scheduled this way, but we have 4 brand new programs starting at the same time, which was crazy. It's crazy. The state health insurance program, we're doing open enrollment. This is all those questions about Medicare and Part D and supplemental programs. It's our first time doing it. So we've tested phones, we've done all sorts of fun things like that, getting ready, getting staff trained and certified so that we can do a good job. We have the PACE Ombudsman program starting this month. They're all starting this month. The ETS, so this is an extension of that program that helps move people out of nursing homes that don't need to be there back into the community. We got a program that extends that, and so we hired a person, and that starts this month. And then the UC Health Pilot Program. This is the program that will help reduce healthcare costs, reduce readmissions to ERs, and hopefully improve patient experience. We are scrambling.
So when do those 4 programs start?
They all start this month. We are waiting for UC Health to sign the final paper. We're hoping that it'll happen next week. The launch, the launch kind of party is on the 28th. So, wow, just really, really busy. I wanted to, at the same time, the State Unit on Aging announced that we are changing our entire data collection system process. That affects every single staff person and at AAA, as well as every single contractor we have in your communities. We have to go through training. They want to start us in October. I'm going to ask that they push that back a little bit and go with Colorado Springs first or something like that, because that's just too much. I want to tell you that we are rolling out a pilot project with Douglas County and Centennial on this is an effort to improve transportation and access to transportation. I need to tell all of you who represent Douglas County that you have a gem in Val Robson down there, and she is awesome. And the way that they're putting together transportation for seniors is just so impressive. We're going to fund them. They're going to contract with Lyft, and we're hoping to be able to buy 3 times the number of trips for seniors and expand it to not just medical and nutrition, but to go to church or to visit. So, right, moving from survive transportation to thrive transportation. We're also going to contract with the city of Centennial. We will start with, I think, in Douglas County in November. We're getting all the systems ready and the documentation, because we have to document the heck out of this, and then hopefully start in December with Centennial. So that's very, very exciting. Yes, I did get the Mayor Hancock's Diversity Inclusion Award, which it was so much fun last night. And I feel like it's about 1 o'clock in the morning because I stayed up way too late last night partying with the Denver Commission on Aging. But it's really the AAA team that does this. And let me tell you why we got this award. We have a Spanish-speaking case management program. We have an elder refugee program. We have a program that provides education and support to LGBT elders. We fund an African American caregiver support program, which Mayor Hancock really appreciated because he deals with his mom and his mother-in-law. We have a health and wellness program for Asian Pacific Islanders. We have a nutrition program and wellness program for Native Americans. We fund 2 kosher meal programs, Meals on Wheels as well as congregate meals. We have blind and visually impaired services, a number of them, a lot of services for mentally ill. You know, we all age, and we experience the same things, challenges, as well as the good parts of aging, but it's influenced by our experience and our culture. And what we found out, if we modify our programs just a little bit and realize those differences, we can make our programs much more effective and help people age better, and that's our goal.
Thank you very much. Report on the RAC. Report on RAC, Director Shakti.
I'm going to add a little bit first. I actually emailed Jayla this week saying that I came to Denver from Lakewood and it cost $6, and are we doing stuff to get that savings? And she said yes and talked about these programs. And today I Ubered from Lakewood to downtown Denver and it cost $2.50. So that's...
You know what? And I intend to fund a program in Lakewood as well called
Get back
what
out
is
of
it?
Lakewood.
Getting there, what is it called? A Little Ride. That's what it's called. So the same thing happening in Lakewood. We'll just start probably in February there.
Cool. So at RAC, we talked about the Volkswagen settlement, and we also sent a letter from the board to the federal government related to their saying that a decrease in the federal fuel standards makes it harder for us to come into compliance for air quality standards in the region. We discussed the state is looking at making changes to Reg 7, which basically they would be doing more monitoring of emissions from oil and gas in the non-attainment areas. And there was some debate about whether that should be expanded to a larger, whether RAC should make a recommendation to expand that to a larger area, and it was agreed that we should wait so that there's more time to look at the issue. This part gets really complicated, so Ken can help me, but basically we met all of the, so we met the 75 value, parts per billion, with the exception of cases where there was smoke from the fires, and we think we can get a exceptional event exception. And that relates to the 2008 standard. But there's also a 2015 standard, which is 70 parts per billion, and we are not meeting that. But the designations for areas come out at the end of the year, and so we'll have a better sense. There's, I think, a fair amount of ambiguity in terms of what's going to happen with that, and so we'll have a better sense when more time goes by. If it turns out we're marginal, we think we need to be in attainment by 2020.
Thank you. E470, Director Rakowski.
Our next meeting is September 28th. The widening project is on time and under budget.
Thank you. Fast Tracks, Director Van Meter.
One additional item to add to our CFO, Heather McKillop's information. Concurrent with all of that, RTD staff has also been conducting a pretty comprehensive look at operations and maintenance possibilities on the North Metro line. We've been comparing private sector operations costs by DTP, who operates our University of Colorado A line and B line, compared with our own in-house estimates for operating that commuter rail line, the North Metro line, with RTD resources in-house. A comparison in terms of pros and cons and risks, costs, and comparison. We updated our board regarding that on the 12th of September, and we'll be coming back with more details, specifics, and cost estimates and comparisons at our October 3rd meeting. So I wanted to let the board know that that's concurrently going, and we're taking a good hard look at the options and alternatives for North Metro operations. In the best interest, we think, of the district and of our citizens' risks and costs, and more information is forthcoming soon.
Thank you. We have addendum 1 on E470. Director Ronkowski.
People from Oklahoma seem to do well. Tim Stewart, who's the executive director, was just named the international president of the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Toll Association. I think I got that right.
That's correct.
And in terms of its name. And I think it just goes to show how Colorado is always out there in the leadership positions.
Thank you. There's some informational items that I would invite you to take a look at. Our next meeting is October 18th. I have one item under other matters by members. I don't know for sure what the process is for celebrating birthdays in Canada. But today is Doug Rex's birthday, and the process here is to sing, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Doug, happy birthday to you." And I'll invite any comments from directors that you would like to make.
Not.
Director Teeter.
Wrap this up.
A.
No, thank you all very much. 49 is still going.
And with that, at 8:45, exactly on time, I'll note, we are adjourned.